I've been teaching mathematics for the last 2.5 years at Honorics Labs, which is an engineering and technology R&D company based here in Pune. So mathematics has always been one of my favorite things. I've been off it a little bit for the last few years. I haven't been doing it full time, even though I genuinely love it. So at Honorics, I've taught 7 different topics so far, courses of sorts, 5 courses, which encompass 7 different topics. So those would be complex analysis, real analysis, functional analysis, linear algebra, symmetry, measure theory, and algebraic topology. You see how speech has to be developed in steps with practice. Keep meeting people, keep talking all the time. Establish those connections between the speech centers of your brain and the memory centers of your brain, linguistic centers of your brain, which process verbal information and connect verbal information to the speech center of the brain. And the filter that exists in between. You don't say any old thing to people, do you? There's always a filtering process involved while talking to people. All these thoughts are arising, and you're reconstructing those thoughts to create optimal thoughts for social consumption, basically. That was a spontaneous sequence of thoughts. No thought has arisen for the last few seconds. So I leave it to consciousness, really. Everything arises from consciousness now, spontaneously. There is no chooser there. Nobody chooses these thoughts, they just arise spontaneously. So I wait for the next thought. So all of spirituality basically comes down to one statement: God alone is. So I am God, these headphones are God, this shirt is God, that curtain is God, this cell phone is God, you are God. Look at the objects around you. Every object that you can see around you is God. Why do I say this? Let's look at this. Where does the idea of God come from? We see the universe and we invoke God as an explanation for where that came from. We define God as the creator of the universe. So in fact the seed of the idea of God is the universe. Because the universe is perceived that we require an explanation for where it came from, and that explanation is God. So in fact the universe is more fundamental than the idea of God. Because the idea of God grows from the universe. It requires a thinking brain, it requires a body which is functioning well. It requires evolution to have progressed far enough for ideas such as God to arise. So now let's look at where this body came from. It grew from being a small baby to this size. That's because, well, you eat over years and that food accumulates into the body and becomes larger and larger until it stops growing eventually, physically at least. So the material that constitutes the body comes from the earth. Now what is the other aspect of what you consider to be yourself. That is the mind. So let's look at where the mind comes from. What does the mind consist of? It consists of memories, words, imagination. Now, what is memory? Memory is external stimuli accumulated and stored. Where do these words come from? These words were all coined by other people. I did not coin any of them. They were imposed upon this mind in order to make sense to other people, in order to function socially. So, the linguistic part of the mind, which consists basically of the building blocks called words, has been 100% imposed upon your mind. So, both the body and the mind are accumulations from external sources, which means that originally who you are, without anything added from outside, is something more fundamental than the body and the mind, because the body and the mind are both accumulations. To be continued.